The screaming had not stopped for 7 days. Lyrian pressed her back against the cold stones of the eastern tower, her heart slamming against her ribs as the cries of the Alpha King's newborn twins echoed across the moonlit courtyard of Grimholt Castle. Every wolf in the kingdom of Ethermore had heard the wailing. Every healer, every wet nurse, every elder with knowledge of ancient remedies had been summoned to soothe the royal heirs. None had succeeded. She should not have come back. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to return to the hollow existence she had carved out since her banishment. But something had pulled her here tonight. Something deeper than instinct. Something that lived in the empty space beneath her ribs. Through the arched window above, golden light spilled from the great hall where the naming ceremony was taking place. She could hear the murmur of hundreds of voices, the rustle of fine fabrics, the forced merriment of nobles pretending not to notice that the kingdom's future heirs had not stopped shrieking since the moment they entered the world. Lyrian's hand moved to her stomach. Flat now. Empty. Several weeks ago, that belly had been swollen with life, with twins of her own, with the children of the Alpha King himself, conceived in secret, carried in silence, destined to change everything. Then Rydian had rejected her. She still remembered the emptiness in his silver eyes when he had spoken the words of severance. Still remembered the way his voice had echoed through the throne room, flat and cold as winter stone. Still remembered the agony that had torn through her body as the incomplete mating bond shattered in her chest. "You are nothing," he had declared before the assembled court. "An omega of no house, no bloodline, no worth. I take Valeth of House Drakemere as my chosen queen. Remove this creature from my sight." Lyrian had been dragged from the castle that same night, her swollen belly earning her no mercy from the guards who threw her into the snow beyond the gates. She had crawled to the nearest village, bleeding and broken, praying that her children would survive even if she did not. They had not survived. The village healer had delivered the twins early, their bodies blue and still in the candlelight. Lyrian had held them for 1 agonizing hour, memorizing faces they would never grow into, before the healer had gently taken them away. She had buried them beneath an oak tree on the edge of the forest, had planted winter roses on the tiny grave, had whispered their names to the wind every night since. Kaelin and Alara, her son, her daughter, gone before they had drawn a single breath. So why was she here? Why had she scaled the castle walls like a thief, risking execution to watch the man who had destroyed her celebrate the children he had made with another woman? Because something was wrong. Lyrian could feel it in her bones, a vibration that resonated with a frequency she should not have been able to hear. The crying of those twins. It called to her. It burrowed beneath her skin and wrapped around her spine, and refused to let her go. She began to climb. The servants' passages were unchanged from her months working in the castle, before Rydian had noticed her, before everything had shattered. Lyrian moved through them like a ghost, her worn cloak pulled tight around her thin frame until she reached the gallery that overlooked the great hall. The scene below stole the breath from her lungs. Thousands of candles blazed from crystal chandeliers, illuminating the gathered nobility of Ethermore. Wolf banners hung from every pillar. The scent of roasted meat and honeyed wine drifted upward. And on the raised dais at the far end, Rydian stood beside his queen. Valeth of House Drakemere was everything Lyrian was not. Tall and willowy, with hair like polished obsidian and eyes the color of frozen amber. She wore a gown of silver and white, and in her arms she cradled 2 screaming infants. The twins. Lyrian gripped the gallery railing until her knuckles went white. She had prepared herself for pain, had steeled herself against the sight of Rydian with another woman. She had not prepared for this. The babies were wrong, not in any way she could articulate. They were beautiful, healthy, their lungs certainly strong enough given the volume of their cries. But something about them made Lyrian's empty womb clench with phantom pain. "Honored guests," the High Elder announced, his reedy voice cutting through the noise. "We gather to bestow names upon the heirs of Ethermore. Prince Kaelin and Princess Alara shall be—" Lyrian stopped breathing. Kaylin, Ilara. The names she had whispered to her dead children. The names she had never spoken aloud to another living soul. The names she had chosen in the secret darkness of her chamber, sharing them only with the man she loved. The man who now stood beside another woman, watching her present children with the exact names Lyrian had chosen. Coincidence. It had to be coincidence. But even as she told herself this, her wolf stirred for the first time in weeks. The beast that had gone silent after the rejection, that had curled up and refused to respond no matter how desperately Lyrian had called to it, suddenly raised its head. Mine. The word echoed through Lyrian's mind with devastating clarity. Those pups are mine. Below, the twins' cries intensified. Their tiny bodies arched in Valeth's arms, their faces contorted with distress that no comfort could ease. And Lyrian understood. They were not crying because they were colicky or hungry or tired. They were crying because they knew. On some primal, instinctive level that transcended logic, those infants knew that the woman holding them was not their mother. Lyrian was. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She staggered backward, a gasp tearing from her throat before she could stop it. On the dais below, Rydian's head snapped up. For one frozen moment, silver eyes met hers across the crowded hall. Lyrian saw something flash through his gaze: recognition, confusion. And beneath it, buried so deep she almost missed it, a desperate, clawing hunger. Then Valeth's hand closed around his arm, and the emptiness returned. "Guards!" The queen's voice rang out, sharp as breaking glass. "There is an intruder in the gallery!" Lyrian ran. She fled through the servants' passages, her pulse thundering in her ears. Behind her, she could hear the thunder of pursuing boots, the shouts of guards who would kill her on sight if they caught her. But louder than all of it, louder than her own ragged breathing, were the cries of the twins she had thought were dead. Cries that followed her into the night, cries that would haunt her dreams for weeks to come. She did not see Rydian break free of his queen's grip the moment she vanished from sight. She did not see him stride toward the gallery with murder in his eyes, only to find it empty. And she did not hear the word that escaped his lips as he stared at the place where she had stood. A word that sounded like grief and longing and rage all twisted into a single syllable. Lyrian. 6 weeks later, the twins were dying. Lyrian learned this not through any official announcement, but through the whispered gossip of merchants in the village market where she had taken refuge. The royal heirs had stopped eating. Their cries had grown weaker with each passing day. Every healer in the kingdom had tried and failed to save them. The Alpha King, they said, had not slept in weeks. His wolf was consuming him, driving him toward a madness from which there would be no return. And the queen, beautiful Valeth, had locked herself in her chambers and refused to see anyone. "Cursed," the fishmonger muttered, shaking his head. "The whole bloodline is cursed. Mark my words, those pups will be dead before the new moon." Lyrian's hands trembled as she counted out coins for her meager purchase. She had spent the past weeks trying to convince herself that she had imagined everything. That grief had twisted her mind into seeing connections that did not exist. But the names she had never shared with anyone, and the way the twins had screamed, as if their tiny souls were reaching for something just beyond their grasp. She returned to her rented room above the tanner's shop and sat in the darkness, staring at the wall. Her wolf paced restlessly within her, a constant presence that had refused to settle since the night of the naming ceremony. "Go back," it urged. "They need us." "They are not mine," Lyrian whispered. "I buried my children. I held their cold bodies in my arms." "Did you?" The question pierced through her carefully constructed walls. She tried to remember, tried to recall the faces of the stillborn infants the village healer had placed in her arms. But the memory was hazy, shrouded in the fog of exhaustion and grief, and the herbs she had been given for the pain. She had been so certain they were gone. But she had never actually seen them buried. The healer had taken the bodies away while Lyrian slept, had told her the burial was complete when she woke. And by then, Lyrian had been too shattered to question anything. A knock at her door made her jump. "Mistress Sarah?" The voice belonged to her landlord, using the false name she had given when she arrived. "There is a woman here to see you. Says she knew you from before." Lyrian's blood went cold. She opened the door to find a face she had never expected to see again. Orla had been the head nursemaid at Grimholt Castle for 30 years. She had been the first to show kindness to a nameless Omega servant who had caught the king's eye, and she had been conspicuously absent on the night of Lyrian's banishment. Now she stood in the cramped hallway, her weathered face etched with exhaustion and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. "I have been searching for you for weeks," Orla said. "Rumors of a healer with silver hair in a village near the forest. May I come in?" Lyrian stepped aside numbly. The old woman entered, glancing around the sparse room before turning to face her. "You went to the naming ceremony. The king saw you in the gallery. I should not have. He has been tearing the kingdom apart trying to find you ever since." Orla's eyes glistened. "He does not remember, child. Whatever they did to him that night, it stole his memories of you. But his wolf remembers, and it is killing him." Lyrian sank onto the edge of her bed. "I do not understand." "The twins." Orla took a shaky breath. "They are dying because they are not with their true mother. Wolf pups cannot survive separation from the one who bore them. It is a bond deeper than magic. Valeth bore them. You saw what the Drakemeres wanted you to see." Orla knelt before her, taking Lyrian's cold hands in her own. "I was there the night your children were born. I was there when they took them from your arms while you slept and replaced them with stillborn pups from a village woman who had lost her own." The world tilted beneath Lyrian's feet. "The queen was never pregnant," Orla continued. "It was all illusion, dark magic bought from practitioners who should have been executed years ago. Your children were given to her. Your children have been raised believing that Monster is their mother." "No." The word came out broken. "No, I held them. They were not breathing." "You held someone else's tragedy. Your twins were alive, Lyrian. They are still alive." Orla's voice cracked. "But they will not be for much longer. They refuse to eat. They refuse to sleep. They do nothing but cry for a mother they have never met." Lyrian was shaking now, tremors racking her body as the truth she had tried so hard to deny came crashing through her defenses. Her children were alive. Her children were dying. And only she could save them. "Even if I believed you," she managed, "I cannot simply walk into Grimholt Castle. The queen will have me killed the moment I set foot inside." Orla reached into her cloak and withdrew a bundle of gray fabric, a servant's uniform. "The castle is in chaos. They have been hiring anyone willing to work near the screaming nursery. No one looks twice at a new face anymore." Lyrian stared at the uniform. "This is madness. This is your only chance." Orla pressed the fabric into her hands. "The queen has convinced the council that the twins' illness is a curse placed by enemies of the realm. She never lets them out of her sight. Then how am I supposed to—" "There will be a council meeting tomorrow at midday. Valeth will be required to attend. For 1 hour the nursery will be watched only by servants." Orla's grip tightened. 1 hour, Lyrian. That is all I can give you." The candle on the table flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled at the rising moon. Lyrian looked down at the servant's uniform in her hands, gray and shapeless, designed to render its wearer invisible. The perfect disguise for a mother who was about to commit treason to save the children she had thought were dead. "If this is a trap," she said quietly, "I will kill you myself." Orla smiled sadly. "If this is a trap, we will both be dead before dawn. But it is not, child. I swear on my own wolf's soul." Lyrian closed her eyes. She thought of 2 tiny graves beneath an oak tree, of names whispered to the wind, of the emptiness that had consumed her since the night everything was stolen from her. Then she thought of 2 infants crying for a mother they could not find. "Tomorrow," she said, and sealed her fate. The nursery was on the highest floor of the eastern tower, as far from the noise of the castle as possible. Lyrian climbed the spiraling staircase with her pulse racing, the gray servant's uniform scratching against her skin. She had entered Grimholt through the kitchen entrance, had kept her head bowed and her scent masked with the bitter herbs Orla had provided. No one had spared her a second glance, but with each step closer to the nursery, her wolf grew more restless. Close. So close. The crying reached her before she reached the door. Weaker than she remembered from the naming ceremony, more like the mewling of kittens than the robust screaming of healthy wolf pups. The sound wrapped around her chest and squeezed. Two servants stood guard outside the nursery, their faces gray with exhaustion. "Shift change," Lyrian murmured, holding up the uniform Orla had given her. "I am to relieve one of you." The younger servant, barely more than a girl, looked at her with naked relief. "Thank the moon. I cannot take another moment of that wailing." She fled down the stairs without a backward glance. The remaining servant simply shrugged. "Good luck. Nothing helps. We have tried everything." "I will manage," Lyrian said. She pushed open the nursery door. The room was beautiful in the way only royal spaces could be. Silk curtains in silver and blue framed tall windows that overlooked the kingdom. Hand-carved furniture gleamed with polish. Toys and blankets and every luxury an infant could desire covered every surface. And in the center of it all, in a bassinet large enough for two, lay the twins. Lyrian's knees nearly buckled. They were so small, so fragile. Their skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and their tiny bodies trembled with each weak cry. The boy, Kaelin, had dark hair like his father. The girl, Alara, had hair the color of moonlight. Like Lyrian's mother. Like Lyrian herself before she had started dyeing it with walnut bark. Mine. Her wolf's certainty crashed through her with the force of a tidal wave. There was no more room for doubt. No more space for denial. Every fiber of her being recognized these children as her own. Lyrian crossed the room on trembling legs. The twins' crying intensified as she approached, their tiny hands reaching upward as if grasping for something they could sense but not see. Lyrian's eyes blurred with tears. "I am here," she whispered. "I am so sorry. I am here now." She reached into the bassinet and lifted Kaelin first, cradling him against her chest. The moment her skin touched his crying stopped. Not gradually. Not a slow settling. Instant silence. The boy's eyes opened, revealing irises of pure silver that stared up at her with an intensity no infant should possess. His tiny hand curled around her finger, and Lyrian felt something snap into place in her chest. A bond, a connection, a thread of pure light linking her soul to his. She lifted Alara with her other arm, and the same thing happened. Silence. Recognition. Bond. Both twins nestled against her, their small bodies relaxing into her embrace, as if they had finally found the one place in the world where they belonged. Their breathing deepened. Their trembling stopped. For the first time in 7 weeks, they were at peace. Lyrian sank into the rocking chair by the window. Both children held close and wept. She did not know how long she sat there. Minutes. Hours. Time lost all meaning as she held the children she had mourned, the children she had believed were buried beneath winter roses. She memorized their faces, the curve of Kaelin's cheeks, the tiny birthmark behind Alara's ear, the way they smelled like milk and moonlight and everything she had lost. "I will find a way," she promised them. "I will find a way to save you, to claim you. I swear on my wolf's soul, I will never let anyone take you from me again." Alara cooed softly, and the sound was the most beautiful thing Lyrian had ever heard. She was so lost in the moment that she did not hear the footsteps in the corridor, did not hear the door open behind her, did not sense the presence until a voice like broken thunder split the silence. "Who are you, and what have you done to make them stop crying?" Lyrian turned, and found herself staring into the silver eyes of the Alpha King. Rydian stood in the doorway, his massive frame filling the space. He looked nothing like the cold, empty man who had banished her. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His cheeks were gaunt. His hair was wild, his clothing disheveled, and his hands trembled at his sides. But it was his expression that stole her breath. He was looking at her the way a drowning man looks at land, with desperate, disbelieving hope. "You," he breathed. And the word held 1,000 questions. The twins stirred in Lyrian's arms, their small heads turning toward the sound of their father's voice. But they did not cry. They remained peaceful, content, as long as they were touching her skin. "I asked you a question." Rydian took a step closer, his nostrils flaring as he tried to catch her scent beneath the masking herbs. No one has been able to quiet them. Not the healers, not the nurses, not even their own. He stopped. Something flickered across his face. Confusion. Recognition. The desperate scrambling of a mind trying to grasp a memory that kept slipping through its fingers. "I know you," he said slowly. "I know you, but I cannot remember." The nursery door burst open again. Valeth swept into the room in a storm of silver silk and cold fury, her amber eyes blazing as they landed on the Omega servant holding her children. "Guards!" the queen screamed. "Guards, seize her! She is the intruder from the naming ceremony. She has put a curse on my children." Everything happened at once. Guards flooded the room. Lyrian clutched the twins closer. Rydian stood frozen between them, his face a mask of tortured confusion. And beneath it all, growing louder with every heartbeat, a single truth demanded to be heard. The truth that would change everything. The truth that would shatter a kingdom and rebuild it from the ashes. The twins did not cry when Lyrian held them because they knew, with the unshakable certainty of blood and bone and destiny, that she was not their curse. She was their mother. The guards lunged toward Lyrian. The twins erupted. Their screams tore through the nursery with a force that made the windows rattle in their frames. Not the weak mewling of sick infants, but the full-throated howls of wolf pups defending their pack. The sound hit the guards like a physical wall, making them stagger backward with hands pressed to their ears. "Silence them!" Valeth shrieked. "Take the woman and silence them!" A guard grabbed Lyrian's arm, trying to wrench her away from the bassinet. The moment his hand touched her, Alara's cry shifted into something else entirely. Something primal. Something ancient. Golden light exploded from the infant's tiny body. The guard flew backward, crashing into the wall hard enough to crack the stone. He slumped to the floor, unconscious, as the other guards froze in terrified confusion. Lyrian stared down at her daughter in shock. The golden glow faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Alara looking as fragile and innocent as any newborn. But the air felt charged, electric, humming with power that should not exist. "What manner of witchcraft is this?" Valeth's voice had gone shrill. "What have you done to my children?" "They are not your children." The words left Lyrian's mouth before she could stop them. She was tired of hiding, tired of running. Tired of pretending that every breath she took without her babies did not feel like drowning. "They have never been your children," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "That is why they cry when you hold them. That is why they are dying in your care. Because you stole them from their true mother and expected them to love you anyway." Valeth's beautiful face contorted with rage. "Execute her. Now." "No." The single word cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone turned to Rydian. The Alpha King had not moved from his position near the door. His silver eyes were fixed on Lyrian with an intensity that made her skin burn. "No one touches her," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "Not until I have answers." "Rydian." Valeth's tone shifted to honeyed sweetness. "My love, you are exhausted. This woman is clearly a witch. Let me handle." "Why do they stop crying when she holds them?" Valeth faltered. "She has cast some spell." "I have watched 17 healers and 32 nursemaids try to soothe those infants." Rydian's eyes never left Lyrian. None succeeded. Yet this stranger walks into the nursery and they fall silent within seconds. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Who are you?" he demanded. "The truth." Lyrian looked up into the face of the man she had loved. The man who had whispered promises in the darkness. The man who had torn her apart and did not even remember doing it. "My name is Lyrian," she said quietly. "And 9 months ago, you told me I was your fated mate." Something shattered behind Rydian's eyes. He staggered backward, one hand flying to his temple as if struck by a sudden pain. A growl built in his chest, low and anguished, and when he looked at her again, his silver eyes had begun to glow with inner light. "That is impossible," he rasped. "I would remember a mate." "You remembered the names?" Lyrian's voice broke. "Kaelin and Alara. The names I chose for our children in secret. The names I whispered only to you. Tell me, Rydian, how did those names end up on the lips of a woman who was never pregnant?" The color drained from the queen's face. "Enough." Valeth swept forward. "She is lying. Guards, take her to the dungeons. She will be executed at dawn." "If you take me from them," Lyrian said calmly, "they will start dying again. Everyone in this room knows it." "Then they will die," Valeth hissed. "I will not have some Omega whore make claims on my throne." "Valeth." The queen turned to her husband, expecting support. What she found made her take an involuntary step backward. Rydian's wolf was rising. His eyes blazed solid silver, and when he spoke, his voice carried the harmonic resonance of alpha command. "She will not be executed. She will be held in the tower until I have investigated her claims." For a long moment, the king and queen stared at each other. Something ugly passed between them. Something that spoke of secrets and lies and a marriage built on foundations of sand. Valeth looked away first. "The tower," she said coldly. "Fine. But if those children die because of her witchcraft, I will tear her heart out myself." The guards took Lyrian's arms. As they led her toward the door, she cast one last look at the twins. "I will come back," she promised them silently. "I will always come back." The door closed behind her, and in the nursery, the wailing began again. The tower cell was cold but clean. Lyrian sat on the narrow bed and listened to the distant sound of the twins crying. It had not stopped since she was taken from them. The door to her cell opened without warning. Orla slipped through the gap, her lined face tight with fear. "We do not have much time," the old nursemaid whispered. "The queen has sent word to her father. Lord Drakemere rides for Grimholt with 2,000 warriors. He will arrive within the week." Lyrian's blood chilled. "She is bringing an army?" "She knows her position is weakening. The king's wolf is fighting through whatever magic they use to suppress his memories." Orla pressed something cold into Lyrian's hand. "A key. When the time comes, use this. The passage behind the loose stone leads to the servants' tunnels. I will not run. Not without my children. Then you will die, and those children will die with you." Orla gripped her shoulders. "I am trying to find proof of what they did. But I need time." Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Orla vanished through the door as silently as she had entered, leaving Lyrian alone with a key and a prayer. The footsteps stopped outside her cell. The door swung open. Rydian stood in the torchlight, his silver eyes haunted by shadows. He looked worse than before. His skin was ashen, his movements unsteady, and when he looked at her, his gaze held the desperate hunger of a man starving for something he could not name. "They will not stop crying," he said hoarsely. "The healers say they will be dead within days if they continue refusing to eat." Lyrian's chest clenched. "Let me go to them. The queen. We'll let them die before she admits the truth." Lyrian stepped toward him. "You know something is wrong, Rydian. Your wolf knows. Why else would you be here?" A shudder ran through his massive frame. "I dream of you," he admitted, the words seeming to tear themselves from his chest. "Every night since the naming ceremony. Dreams so vivid I wake with your name on my lips." His voice cracked. "But I do not remember you." "Because that memory was stolen from you." "By whom? How?" By the same people who stole our children from my arms and told me they were dead. Lyrian reached up to touch his face, then stopped herself. Let me show you. Let me touch the twins while you watch. See for yourself how they respond to their true mother. For a long moment, he said nothing. Somewhere far away, the twins continued their heartbreaking wails. 1 hour, he finally said. The queen sleeps. I will take you to the nursery myself. He reached for her hand. The moment their fingers touched, lightning shot up Lyrian's arm. She gasped, and she saw her shock mirrored on Rydian's face. What was that? He breathed. The mate bond, Lyrian whispered. Broken, but not destroyed. Still trying to reconnect after all this time. Rydian stared at their joined hands. Then, without another word, he led her from the cell. They were halfway to the nursery when the warning bells began to toll. The castle erupted into chaos. Servants fled through corridors. Guards shouted orders that overlapped into meaningless noise. And above it all, the bells continued their relentless clanging. Rydian pulled Lyrian into an alcove as a squad of armed warriors thundered past. Those are Drakemere colors, he growled. How did they arrive so quickly? Vaelith planned this, Lyrian realized. The moment I was captured, she must have sent word. They were never coming to support her position. They were coming to take the throne. Rydian's eyes blazed silver. My own wife conspires against me? Your wife was never truly yours. This entire marriage was built on lies and dark magic. Lyrian gripped his arm. The twins, Rydian. We have to get to the twins before they do. They ran. The tower stairs seemed endless. By the time they reached the nursery floor, Lyrian's lungs were burning and her legs threatened to give out beneath her. But the twins' crying drove her forward. They burst through the nursery door to find Vaelith already there. The queen stood beside the bassinet, her beautiful face twisted into something monstrous. In her hand, she held a dagger that glowed with sickly green light. How touching, she said coldly. The false king and his Omega whore come to rescue the brats. Unfortunately, you are too late. Step away from them. Rydian's voice carried the full weight of alpha command, but Vaelith only laughed. Your tricks do not work on me anymore, husband. The binding that made me submit to you was broken the moment my father's wolves crossed your border. She raised the dagger. These children were supposed to secure my place on the throne. If I cannot have them, no one will. Lyrian did not think. She simply moved. Her body slammed into Vaelith's a heartbeat before the dagger could descend. They crashed to the floor in a tangle of limbs and silk, the poisoned blade skittering across the stones. All she knew was that her children were in danger, and something inside her was waking up. The golden light began in her chest and spread outward like sunrise. It poured from her eyes, her mouth, her fingertips, filling the nursery with radiance that drove back the shadows. Vaelith screamed as the light touched her skin, scrambling backward until she hit the wall. What are you? The queen gasped. Lyrian did not know. She only knew that power was flooding through her veins, ancient and terrible and utterly right. It was the same energy that had erupted from Alara when the guards tried to take her. The light coalesced around the twins, forming a protective barrier that shimmered like captured starlight. I am their mother, Lyrian said, and her voice carried harmonics that made the walls tremble. And you will never touch them again. Vaelith fled. Lyrian let her go. Right now, only one thing mattered. She turned to the bassinet. The twins had stopped crying the moment her light surrounded them. They lay peacefully, their silver eyes fixed on her face, their tiny mouths curved into something that looked almost like smiles. Lyrian gathered them into her arms and wept. A hand touched her shoulder. She looked up to find Rydian staring at her with wonder and awe. And beneath it all, the first stirrings of memory fighting its way to the surface. The light, he whispered. I remember that light. From a dream. From a night in the forest when the moon was full and you— He stopped, his voice breaking. Lyrian, what happened to us? Before she could answer, an explosion rocked the castle. The window shattered inward. Through the opening, Lyrian could see Drakemere banners flying from the main gate. "We need to move," Rydian said. "The Eastern Tower has a hidden passage." "My king!" Brennick, Rydian's first commander, appeared in the doorway, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. "Lord Drakemere has taken the throne room. He has declared you unfit to rule and named Valeth regent." Brennick's eyes flicked to Lyrian and the babies. "He is demanding your surrender, and the execution of the Omega." "Over my dead body," Rydian snarled. "That can be arranged," a new voice said. Lord Aldrich Drakemere stepped into the nursery, flanked by a dozen warriors in black armor. He was an older version of his daughter, with the same cold amber eyes. "My son-in-law," he said pleasantly. "You have caused my family a great deal of trouble. The spell we paid so dearly for was supposed to keep you compliant for decades. You drugged me." Rydian's voice was deadly quiet. "You stole my memories. You gave my children to your daughter. Made you believe exactly what we needed you to believe." Drakemere shrugged. "The Drakemere bloodline deserves the throne. We simply expedited the process." Lyrian clutched the twins closer, her golden light flickering as exhaustion began to set in. "Now," Lord Drakemere continued, "you will surrender yourself to my custody. The Omega and the brats will be disposed of quietly." Rydian stepped in front of Lyrian and his children. "You will have to kill me first." "That was always the plan." Drakemere raised his hand. The black-armored warriors drew their swords. And in the distance, a horn sounded. Not a Drakemere horn. Not the castle defenders. Something older. Something wilder. Something that made Lord Drakemere's face go pale. "Impossible," he breathed. The wolves came from the forest like a silver tide. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Wolves of every size and color, their eyes blazing with ancient light as they poured through the broken gates of Grimholt. At their head ran a massive white wolf whose fur glowed with the same golden radiance that had erupted from Lyrian. "The wild packs," Brennick whispered in awe. "The wolves who answer to no king. They have not been seen in 300 years." Lord Drakemere's warriors broke formation, their training forgotten in the face of the impossible tide flowing toward them. Some tried to fight. Most simply ran. It did not matter. The wild packs showed no mercy. In the nursery, Lyrian stared at the chaos unfolding beyond the shattered window. The white wolf leading the charge, the golden glow surrounding its form. She knew that wolf. "Grandmother?" she breathed. The word triggered something in her memory. Stories her mother had told her as a child. Tales of a bloodline that stretched back to the first wolves. Of women who carried light in their veins and could call upon the wild packs in times of desperate need. Of Luna healers. Lyrian looked down at her daughter, at the tiny girl who had defended her mother with a burst of golden power. "We are Luna healers," she realized aloud. "The bloodline survived." Before Rydian could respond, Lord Drakemere lunged. The old wolf lord had not fled with his warriors. Instead, he had circled behind them during the chaos. His eyes blazed with desperate fury as he drew a blade identical to the one Valeth had carried. "If I cannot have the throne," he snarled, "then no one will." He hurled the poisoned dagger at the twins. Time slowed to a crawl. Lyrian saw the blade spinning through the air, its green glow leaving trails of sickness in its wake. She saw Rydian moving to intercept, too slow, too far away. She saw her children, peaceful in her arms, unaware of the death hurtling toward them. And she made her choice. She turned her back to the dagger. The blade struck between her shoulder blades with an impact that drove the breath from her lungs. Cold spread through her body as the poison entered her bloodstream. She fell to her knees, still clutching her children, still keeping her body between them and danger. "No." Rydian's roar shook the stones. He caught her before she hit the floor, his arms wrapping around her and the twins, his face a mask of anguish. "Lyrian, stay with me." But the poison was spreading. She could feel it crawling through her veins, turning her blood to ice. Her vision was dimming. Her strength was fading. "The twins," she gasped. "Protect them, promise me." "You are not dying," I will not allow it. Rydian. She reached up to touch his face with trembling fingers. I love you. I have always loved you. Even when I thought you had abandoned me. Even when I believed our children were dead. Something cracked open in Rydian's silver eyes, and memory came flooding back. Lyrian saw it happen. Saw the spell that had bound his mind shatter like glass. Saw weeks of stolen moments return to him in a single devastating instant. The moonlit clearing, he choked out. The night I marked you. The way you laughed when I stumbled over my own words trying to tell you I loved you. You remember? I remember everything. Tears streamed down his face. Lyrian, I remember everything, and I cannot lose you again. He pressed his forehead to hers. And then he did something that should have been impossible. He pushed his own life force through the incomplete mate bond. Golden light erupted from where their skin touched. Not Lyrian's light this time, but something new, something shared. The power of a true bond, finally awakening. The poison in her veins began to burn away. Lyrian gasped as warmth flooded through her body, driving back the cold, healing the damage. But it was not just physical healing. The mate bond was completing itself, weaving their souls together in a connection that could never be severed. She felt everything he felt. His rage at what had been done to them. His grief for the weeks they had lost. His overwhelming love for her and the children they had created together. And he felt her. All of her. The pain of her rejection, the anguish of believing her babies were dead. The fierce determination that had brought her back to Grimholt despite knowing it might cost her life. When the light finally faded, they were both changed. Lyrian rose to her feet, the poison fully purged from her system. The twins in her arms cooed with contentment, their small bodies glowing with faint golden light. Rydian stood beside her, his silver eyes now flecked with gold. Lord Drakemere cowered against the wall. Please, the old lord whimpered. I will give you anything. Just spare my life. Your family stole my memories, my mate. And my throne. Lyrian stepped toward him. There is nothing you can offer that would balance those scales. The white wolf who had led the wild packs padded through the ruined doorway and shifted into human form. An old woman stood in the wolf's place, her hair silver as moonlight, her eyes the same gold as Lyrian's power. Hello, granddaughter, she said. I see you have finally awakened. Grandmother. Lyrian stared in shock. I thought you died when I was a child. I went to lead the wild packs after your mother chose to live among the house wolves. The old woman's gaze lingered on the twins with visible wonder. But we have watched over our bloodline always. When your light ignited, we felt it across the entire realm. She turned to Lord Drakemere, and her expression hardened. The crimes of House Drakemere are known to us. The wild packs pronounced judgment. Lord Drakemere screamed. Lyrian turned away, shielding the twins from what came next. When the screaming stopped, only silence remained. The great hall of Grimholt had never been so silent. 3 days had passed since the fall of House Drakemere. Vaelith had been found hiding in the wine cellars. She had screamed curses as the guards dragged her before the assembled court. Now she knelt in chains before the throne, awaiting judgment. Lyrian stood beside Rydian on the raised dais, the twins cradled in her arms. The claiming mark on her shoulder, renewed and completed during the battle, was visible for all to see. Vaelith of House Drakemere, Rydian announced, you have been found guilty of conspiracy against the crown, dark magic, theft of royal heirs, and attempted murder. He paused. The sentence is death. However, the Luna healer has requested mercy. Lyrian stepped forward. I have lost too much to hatred. I will not build my children's future on a foundation of blood. She met Vaelith's gaze steadily. You will be stripped of your name and your wolf. You will be exiled to the frozen reaches, where the wild packs will ensure you never return. The guards dragged the former queen from the hall, her screams echoing long after the doors closed behind her. Then Rydian took Lyrian's hand and raised it high. People of Ethermoor, he declared, I present to you your true queen, Lyrian of the Luna bloodline, mother of Crown Prince Kaelin and Princess Alara, my fated mate." One by one, every wolf in Grimholt knelt before their new queen. Lyrian's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Weeks ago, she had been a broken woman mourning children she believed were dead. Now she stood on the throne dais with her babies in her arms and a kingdom at her feet. The formal bonding ceremony took place beneath the full moon, in the same moonlit clearing where Rydian had first marked her. "I have imagined this moment 1,000 times," Rydian said quietly. "During the weeks I could not remember you, my wolf dreamed of a woman made of moonlight. I knew that without her, I would never be whole." He took her hands. "You are that woman, Lyrian, and I will spend every remaining day of my existence proving that I am worthy of your love." The bonding words were ancient, passed down through generations of wolf kind. They spoke them together, their voices intertwining like threads of silver and gold. When the final word left their lips, the mate bond completed itself. When they finally separated, the assembled wolves lifted their voices in a howl of celebration. "My queen," Rydian murmured against her lips. "My king," she answered. 1 year later. The nursery was chaos. Kaelin had discovered he could shift into wolf form and had been terrorizing the castle staff ever since. Ilara preferred to remain human, but had developed the habit of making objects float whenever she was upset. Lyrian watched from the doorway as Rydian attempted to corral their son, who was currently hiding under the bassinet that now held their youngest child. "Kaelin Brennick Thornwood," the Alpha King growled, "if you do not come out this instant—" A tiny black wolf darted between his legs and made a break for freedom. Lyrian caught her son mid-leap, laughing as his small body wriggled in her arms. Rydian joined them, wrapping his arms around his family. Little Oriana, named for the nursemaid who had risked everything to reunite them, slept peacefully in her bassinet. "Would you change any of it?" Lyrian asked. Rydian looked around the nursery, at Kaelin squirming in his mother's arms, at Alara floating her toys in lazy circles, at Oriana, at Lyrian, his fated mate, his queen. "Not a single moment," he said. Outside the window, the wolves of Ethermore lifted their voices in the evening howl, a kingdom at peace, a family restored, a love that had survived betrayal and loss. Lyrian pressed a kiss to Rydian's jaw and smiled. "Good answer, my king." And in the warm golden light of the nursery, surrounded by the children who had cried for her, and the man who had never truly forgotten her, Lyrian finally understood what it meant to be home. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.